We're back. Star Wars Newsnet is here with Tom. How are you? My name is Tyler. I forgot to say that, but anyway, Tom, I feel like it's been, as you can see based off of that wonderful intro, it's been a while since we've been able to chat just due to there's just been so much craziness in everyone's lives, traveling. Luke's getting married in 4 days, so he hasn't been on a live show in who knows how long. And we finally got together, record a timeline show recently, and then school started back up for me. I know you've been having all the travels in the world, so good to see you. I know we just talked for like 30 minutes about all sorts of things, but here we are. We're going to talk about two actors that we hope or are going to talk about whether or not they return to Star Wars, and Katee Sackhoff and Oscar Isaac, because both have made some comments recently about not necessarily and Oscar Isaac, he talked more about like, would he return? We could get into some of the, ways that we interpreted how he said that. And then Katee Sackhoff had really interesting comments on her podcast about, what it was like playing Bo-Katan, which makes it wonder, would she even be open to playing the role again? So anyway, Tom, it's good to see you. Are you ready to jump into some Star Wars conversation?
Let's do it. I've been itching for it.
Okay, that is good because we're going to start off by not talking about Star Wars because I want to ask you if you've ever watched the show Battlestar Galactica.
Yes, I did. All right, I'm going to age myself.
Okay, the newer one.
I've watched every incarnation of Battlestar Galactica.
Okay.
I remember the day when I was a child and going back late 70s when the original Battlestar Galactica premiered, and I couldn't watch it because my sister picked the show that evening.
Okay.
And it was like Lassie or something like that. And I missed the premiere of Battlestar Galactica, but I did later catch up with it. But okay. I have watched it. I've always been a big fan. I actually have, I should have brought it out. I have the Cylon box collection of that.
Oh my gosh, you do? Are you serious?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it. Hang on.
So the reason I asked Tom about this is because Katee Sackhoff, who we're about to talk about in a moment, anyway, it brought on Hilo for podcast. Oh, let's go. Oh my gosh, I love it. That's good.
And I'm a big fan of the new one too, with or the latest one with Katee Sackhoff and crew.
So that's the only one I've seen, and that's one of my probably 3 favorite shows of all time. I mean, it is just amazing. And so if you haven't watched that show, and we'll tie this into Star Wars because Katee Sackhoff is in it, and she plays arguably the best character in the show. I'll give her. I would rank Starbuck number 2 in that show because the Colonel for me takes it. Colonel Ty is by far my favorite character in that show. Just the amount of quotable things that he says throughout that show is great. But anyway, I also just to go off topic even more, I bought at MegaCon this last year. I bought this like Cylon print, this Battlestar Galactica print that says all this has happened before, all this happened again. And it's like all of the Vipers there's like a few Vipers and then Battlestar, and they have all the Cylon. There's just tons of Cylon Raiders around it. But I moved and I cannot find it. Like for the life of me, I don't know where it is. And I'm so angry because I bought this thing and I'm like, I wanted to hang it up, and I have all my other stuff hung up except for that. And I am outraged at this point.
Oh, wow.
But all that to say, her guest that Katee Sackhoff had on her podcast was the guy who played Hilo from the show, and they were talking about her time as Bo-Katan, and if you have a chance to go listen to the whole podcast, I recommend it because one, Katee Sackhoff is just fun to listen to, and then she brought on one of her former Battlestar Galactica actors. So anyway, if you haven't watched that show, you have Tom and I stamp of approval for it. Like I said, it's one of my 3 favorite shows of all time, and I really don't. I know sometimes people put lists together like, oh, that's a top 10 movie ever. Or, he's a top 5 player of all time. I'm like, make your list. And then like, oh, wait, actually, I just named 10 before okay. So I say top 3. I genuinely think I might rest in that top 3 because it is to me like perfect from start to finish for me. Like it's pretty much perfect. I just wish it lasted longer. Only 4 seasons. I wish it had 7 seasons of stuff there. Anyway, so Katee Sackhoff basically was saying how playing Bo-Katan was one of like the hardest thing of her career, and she was left, and let me find like the exact, quote here from our Star Wars Newsnet article, because Tom, it made me feel like we don't know that she's going to be in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. And some of the quotes made me feel like it wouldn't be a stretch to say she's not going to after hearing this. Here's the full quote was, "I lost all my confidence after Mandalorian. All of it. My style of acting has always just been your first instinct is the right instinct. Do that. Play the reality of the situation. And I've never really played a character. Do you know what I mean? I've always played 2 steps removed from myself in a sense. It always felt grounded in some part of my belly of who I was. And Bo-Katan is nowhere near who I am as a human being. Her life, what she wants, I didn't understand her. As much as I understood her, I never felt her in my stomach. I never identified with her. I didn't know how to find her." But the thing that really kind of drew my attention was how she said she lost all confidence after the Mandalorian. So Tom, like you hear that, and obviously if she's been in the Mandalorian, we're way past the time where filming and everything is wrapped. They're just wrapping up a few things with that movie, and then they're going to sit on it for a while. And we're not far removed from a trailer and getting that full cast announcement. Do you think she's going to be in that cast announcement?
Before this story broke, I would say that it would be strange if she wasn't in the movie, because she played such a large role in both in season 2 and 3, especially in season 3 of The Mandalorian. So I thought it would be strange if she wasn't somehow included in whatever adventure they go on, even maybe not a large part, but after and I watched, did you watch the podcast?
I watched about half of it, I think, so far.
Yeah.
I have the rest like queued up. I basically went to all the Star Wars stuff and watched, and then I kind of got engrossed in some of their conversation, and then I want to go back and watch the full thing though.
Right. I didn't see the whole thing either, but I saw that part for the story. I read the article, but then I wanted to see that portion. And it was heartbreaking to watch because she gets very emotional. It's very moving. And the person she was speaking with, it's like he was very affirming of going through that as a performer, as an actor, not being able to find that
Hilo. He channeled his inner Hilo.
Exactly. And it was really heartbreaking to watch, to see, and also Hilo touched on the aspect of that. It's you're on the biggest stage, you're in a gigantic property and IP that you're portraying this character. Millions of fans have such high hopes and strong opinions about everything that happens. So that must have played into it. And I don't know if she really talks about the details and specifics of what that situation was like. Where did she lose her confidence? Was it in how she felt herself, that was what I was led to believe, but
the interpretation that I got was that it was just she lost confidence because it's, and this is obviously we're speculating, this is speculation. So
right.
is because when she mentioned how she feels it in her gut when she's a character, like she says she doesn't play a character. Her roles that she's had define are like a part of her in some way. Like she only has to take a few steps and to remove herself from the situation, and then she can kind of gravitate towards a part of herself that's inside of who she's trying to play. And for someone like Katee Sackhoff to lose all confidence, I think about her character of Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica, who is one of the most confident, like arrogant, cocky individuals ever. And if Katee Sackhoff is telling me that part of, her is this really confident, and any part of Katee Sackhoff that I've seen from interviews in the past, or, sometimes, how she comes across on the internet and how she portrays herself to the world, is someone who is extremely confident and definitely knows that like they are, I was about to say like they are the shit, right? Like they know who they are. And for her to be that emotional saying she lost the confidence, to me that says that this was something that she didn't enjoy. Like I don't know, like to me it felt like there wasn't the joy in playing this character. And I'm curious, like if she lost confidence and is struggling in that regard, while
I
doing Bo-Katan. Is that something she would want to return to? But
right.
it's also possible that, she can't say all the things that she's filmed for Bo-Katan. So she's like, when we finish Mandalorian, she could be talking about the show, sure. But there's a chance she might even be thinking about things that she's filmed, for the movie as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. One other thing I was thinking of too is that if you're an actress going through that crisis of having a hard time finding the character, knowing what you're doing is working, one of the tough things, and I'm not trying to push blame elsewhere, but or say this person's fault or that person's fault, but you have a pretty much a novice director in Dave Filoni for live action. But then again, I was going to say, like, maybe it was hard for him to communicate to her. But then I say, well, Jon Favreau is also there, who's more seasoned and has more experience directing. But also,
well, they've had other directors too, for
yeah, that's true
episodes they've
too.
been in, probably.
That's true too. So that it kind of invalidates my point because there were other directors there, but I don't know who. Like again, she wasn't really. She didn't really give too many details about it with a specific episode or just that process. She played the character great in the animated series, and but obviously doing in live action is another story. So yeah, and I was wondering if it had anything to do with any kind of fan backlash that may have.
She talked about how she didn't really want to where was like when she went to audition or interview for the live action role because she didn't really she put off that. She said like 3 times she put that off because she just didn't feel like it was her best or
Right.
it was or it was purely authentic even. And I imagine that any person that's a professional in their field, right, that really cares about their craft, there's certain things that different professions might care about more. And to me, like something I feel like is a recurring thing you hear from actors is wanting to feel authentic in their role, like authenticity. And it feels like she's saying that she doesn't feel like she's giving an authentic portrayal of this character, or she doesn't feel authentic as the actor in this part because she just has no commonality with Bo-Katan. Like there's nothing about Bo-Katan that she really resonates with at her core. And how often do we hear actors like on the campaign trail for a movie or a show talking about how much they were able to resonate with this part of their character and let that come alive, or they really thought that this story was so good that they thought they could really tackle on this character. But here she is saying that this is the most difficult part. And I'm like, for someone as professionally, one, it just shows how these actors, they are so human as well, to experience someone like Katee Sackhoff, who most people would be like, oh, that person has to just have everything. Like you are, well renowned in many projects. You are a household name in science fiction.
Mhm.
Most people will be like, oh, that person shouldn't struggle with confidence issues at all. And here she is opening up about some very emotional things that she struggled with in this Star Wars role. And it really did make me think maybe we haven't heard about her being in Mandalorian because she kind of said, hey, like you could argue her story was resolved. She decided to do
That's
that,
true.
and she doesn't really want to move on to do another, big project like this.
Yeah, and again, I would say that in that situation, I think I mean I wasn't on set. I don't know what's going on, but like that is really the director's job to really help that actress or actor through that process. So and again, they were very low on details, but that said, to your point again, I think that at first I thought it would be a given that we'd see everyone. I think they bring
Right.
everyone out for the Mandalorian movie, right? Like the greatest hits. But her story really did wrap up as far as they they don't really I could see a way that they could write a story that didn't include her, especially if she was going through the struggle at that time and she felt like she wanted to pass on it. So yeah, it remains to be seen. I guess we'll find out.
Which is interesting that
soon.
And I've said for a while, I've wanted this movie to feel like The Mandalorian and Grogu, like their movie, not the
Mm-hmm.
who can we mash into it. But
Yeah.
if there were, if when we're talking about a Mandalorian movie, incorporating other Mandalorians seems to be the easiest thing to do story wise, right? And yet, the three most, unless I am mistaken, prominent Mandalorians of that are alive at this time, other than Din Djarin in our eyes, are Bo-Katan, where we're like wondering at this point, maybe Katee Sackhoff's not, going to be in this possibly. Boba Fett,
Right.
and we know Tamora Morrison's been very adamant about he hasn't got a call. Like he's waiting for a call, and that makes me so
That
sad all the time.
surprises me, to be honest. Actually, more so than not seeing
Yeah,
Bo-Katan. Not seeing Boba
and then
Fett would
well,
be
and then
strange.
and then Sabine, but we know Sabine's off in another galaxy, so
Right.
it makes sense that she wouldn't be in this from that. But it is interesting that I thought an easy sell for them for this would be to have like a Boba Fett in the trailer real fast because you can put him on a movie poster and you have OG fans that are gonna know who Boba Fett is and be excited to go see a movie where he's flying around his jetpack as well. But I think it's interesting that I feel like there's a chance you won't see either of them, and that I don't know if I thought like when we talked about this a year ago, like let's say a year ago when Mandalorian and Grogu, like last January or whatever
Wow.
year ago when this idea was fully fleshed out there, if I would have said it's a lock that Boba Fett would be in this movie. Like I wouldn't
Right.
even have hesitated. And now I'm like, I don't think he's in it. And then now, if you would 6 months ago, when Star Wars Celebration was happening 4 or 5 months ago, asked me if Bo-Katan was gonna be in this movie. I said, "Oh, it's a lock. I'm surprised she's not there at Celebration." But then I hear this. It is interesting to think about what this movie would look like without some of the other prominent Mandalorians. Like, is Din Djarin the only Mandalorian we're going to see in this movie? That might be the case, which to me feels odd given that Mandalore has finally been, rebirthed by, the Mandalorians. They take it over. I would have thought maybe this would be an easy way to include more.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I would be sad if we don't see Boba Fett, to be honest. And that might be
I
my the 5-year-old kid in my mind. Like,
No, I mean it would be sad, and so Miguel's not here to defend himself, so I don't want to disparage Miguel too much. And sometimes though, I will share a little bit of what happens behind the scenes, everyone in our Star Wars Newsnet Discord. And I will say that Miguel, anytime there's the story, because it makes the rounds every few days, Miguel, Tamora Morrison wants to be back in Star Wars season 2 of Boba Fett. Like he still hasn't got a call, and there for the last time, Miguel was like, he's like, yeah, I'm tired of hearing about it. Like, all right, move on. Like, we're done. But that's the one. Whenever Ewan McGregor comes out and says these things, I never get. So I'm like, Ewan, you literally had your own show. You were in 3 movies. Like, come on now.
right.
Well, Tamora Morrison, I can kind of, Django, obviously, but I kind of get it. Like, given what was probably talked about at a time and how it all went with Boba Fett, and his show got hijacked half the show
Yeah.
by the other Mandalorian. And so I do kind of get that, but then
So now
it
he'll get paid
it's
back in the movie. He'll he'll
yeah,
he'll
it's
be the
just it
whole third
which
act.
it makes like it from just a marketing move, even if he's only in it for 2 minutes, having a 2-second shot in your trailer of his fire spray gunship, of Slave One, which I guess I don't think they call it Slave One. I think they changed it to just like the fire spray gunship, whatever
Yeah.
it is. But anyway, so if you just having Boba Fett's ship fly in for 2 seconds, right, and then you just see him for a second, put him like they always do these stupid floating heads posters for everything now. So you have Boba in the trailer for a second, just a brief shot. I don't know. To me, that seems like an easy win. Like just easy print some more money out for people that just want to see Boba Fett.
Yeah, that ship is so iconic. When we first saw it in Mandalorian in that episode, I guess in season 2, I wish I had a reaction. I gasped, to see that. It was just so cool. So yeah, I mean, I hope. Like I said, we were talking about, we have D23 coming up this weekend. Hopefully, more information will drop. Maybe some cast announcements,
Right.
because we don't know. We really don't know much other than some of the leaked footage from the conventions.
Don't know a lot. And yeah, so I'm curious with Katee Sackhoff to see if she'll be in this. Obviously, it's one of those where I really want Bo-Katan in this movie, but at the same time, as a fan, obviously, if she's in this movie, it's because she felt that she could give the best performance she could, and she felt comfortable doing that. But I don't want her, to do it. Sometimes I know, especially a lot of any person, like I said, is actors to some degree. Some of the great ones do feel a certain responsibility sometimes when they're in different fandoms or things to try and make those things work. And so, but I don't want her to feel like she had to do Bo-Katan out of an obligation to whatever and do that because she didn't want to face criticism for turning down a role as Bo-Katan in this movie. Like, I hope she was able to, if she's in the movie, be like, get a good, positive experience out of it, along with the sizable check that probably came alongside.
Well, I tell you, if she's in the movie, I'm going to be really happy to see her, because I really appreciated her transparency with talking about that. It was, I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing that, not just if you're a performer, but just a person, about having that imposter syndrome and
It's
finding,
crazy.
yeah, finding it again. And I'd love to see her back.
And so many people deal with that like all the time. Like, I deal with that at school sometimes when I'll get put in charge of a project or I'll be in charge of like leading something, and I'm like, why am I in charge? But that's the way it rolls. Let me ask you a question. This is not Katee Sackhoff related. This is about Bo-Katan and Din Djarin. Were you team Dinbo? Like, were you shipping the two of them in season 3?
Yeah, I
This
think I was. I
uh,
think me and a lot of people.
Thank you. I am furious. Okay, so season 3 of The Mandalorian, the more I sit with it, the more angry it like actually makes me, because I feel like they missed the mark so much in that season,
Yeah,
because they forgot about they knew where they wanted to get to, and they knew the beginning, and they knew where they wanted to get to. They completely forgot about how to get there along the like what to do along the way, right? And oh man, just the moments between the two of them where I'm like, there is something here to have the ending of the season. Like, Din Djarin, right? Adopts Grogu as his son, like finally like adopts him as a son. And then there's no scene with the three of them after they were a trio for like the entire season, and there is no scene with the three of them at the end. No, like, we'll see you again, or I'm glad just, or even some sort of hint at something in the future, or even just like a resolution like scene for their relationship for the season. Not necessarily a romantic relationship, just their dynamic and the relationship they had, as wow, we both helped each other so much, over the last however many days, weeks the season took place in. And the fact that it just ended cold turkey, like he shows up and then all of that, and then we moved on. And I swear to the midichlorians out there and the all of the ghosts of the wills or whatever they're called, right? That if we don't have any sort of tease or reveal of why Grogu is the one sensing the mythosaur, and you know, there was just so much. Like, I thought the mythosaur was going to play a role in helping them,
right. I
for
did
these
too.
Mandalore. And then I thought for sure there was going to be some sort of payoff for the relationship with them. And it's like, nope, nope, nope. We actually are never, once the finale hits for the most part, like, and Grogu saves mom and dad from the fire burning around, we're actually never going to speak to each other again. Like, actually, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So upset. So if she's not in this movie and I don't get any closure on this, I'm going to be sitting here like pounding my fists against my desk here for the next, 80 years until I die.
It's
Upset
interesting
at season 3.
with the exception of Andor, there's really very little, if none, romance in any of the Disney Star Wars. I'm just trying to think back through. It's like, you had, Han and Leia and the original trilogy, Anakin and Padme. The sequel trilogy, there were hints at this or that, but there wasn't really any kind of romance.
Well, I mean, how many? Like, I left Force Awakens thinking that Rey and Finn were gonna be
Yeah,
a romantic
I
couple,
did too.
right? And then I left Episode 8, and I'm like, okay, maybe I don't know. And then goes, well, then even at the end of Episode 8, like Rey and Poe have that brief little like
Right.
thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, and then then she's kissing Kylo at the end, and
Yeah.
I can kind of get on board with it with their like connection they have in
Yeah.
Episode 8,
It was
but
such a
it also,
strong bond that they
but when Ben only says one word and it's ow for the last 45 minutes, oh my gosh, now we're going into now we're in the
get in
weeds.
the weeds. Listen, I'm a big defender of that movie. I don't care what anyone says because I am very entertained by that movie, but there are a lot of things that I do see with it that kind of drive me nuts. But yeah,
Let
so
me ask you a question about Rise of Skywalker, or
okay.
Star Wars here. So this is a conversation I had with my friend yesterday, and it was, which Star Wars movie has the greatest disparity between what on earth were they thinking here and on one end, and then on the other end of like, that is just some awesome, like pure Star Wars lore building, epic moments, thematic themes are hitting, all, the peak Star Wars with what is actually happening. Because we both had two different answers. He said Attack of the Clones. I said Rise of Skywalker, but I ranked Attack of the Clones number 2 on my list of the biggest disparity, because I think that there are in Rise of Skywalker, as much as you hate it, I think there are some awesome moments in that
Oh yeah,
movie, just pure
totally.
awesome moments. But I also think there are just so many just what the heck moments. I think there's more of them, so I think that has the biggest disparity. But I'm curious, just off the cuff, like what movie would you say is number 1?
That's a good question because I see those in a lot of the movies, unfortunately.
Right,
I'm
yeah,
trying to
that's
think.
part
I
of the
mean,
Star Wars thing, right?
yeah, I think so, but less so, I would say. Well, we could get really down a rabbit hole here. I think you're up there with Attack of the Clones. Um, see, Rise of Skywalker. The thing that to me makes it better than like up against a prequel film is the performances. I think the performances are very strong in the sequel trilogy, to be honest. The writing, yeah, I think even the writing's better, to be honest with you. Maybe not so much
Mhm.
plot, but more like dialogue. And
Yeah.
so it's tough to say because I feel like the good stuff in Rise of Skywalker for me
Mhm.
actually it covers a multitude of sins in many ways. But yeah, I mean, I think there's even
Mhm.
we always joke about that scene in Revenge of the Sith when they're on the balcony. That like I just don't like. I never understood what that dialogue was supposed to be when it says "I love you," because you're so beautiful. And then
Well, but
that
that's like
movie,
one. That's like one though. That's only one. I
that's
think
one.
Revenge of the
Yeah,
Sith is probably
probably
one of the better ones. Here, so this is the
probably
fascinating thing
fan.
is I asked, we had this conversation. He said 2, I said 9. So I decided to ask like 2 other people that I knew were really in the stars, 2 of my friends. One person said episode 1
I think I would
because
go with episode
of,
one, to be honest
and
with you.
then but then another person told me they felt like it was, and this was, I thought this was this is certifiable, was they said episode 6. And I thought that was crazy, but they were explaining more about how they've never been able to get on board the Ewoks, and they were not, they were someone who didn't discover Star Wars so much later in
Yeah,
their life, and their argument that they were explaining was, how come I spent like 45, 50 minutes at Jabba's palace, like, before we left. They're like, all this stuff's happening there, and I felt like the movie didn't start until they got to Rebel headquarters, but you're like a third of the way through the movie at that point. And so, and he was just saying, I didn't really care about, there's this, he said there was like this monkey that was laughing over and over, and I'm thinking about Salacious B. Crumb and some of the like Sarlacc stuff, and he's like, I was like, why am I watching this? I'm like, this, the Emperor is on the Death Star and Vader is winning his son, but I'm like watching this slug and or something. And so it's
It's
funny to get
funny.
someone else's perspective. And then he's like, he just never got on board with the Ewok scenes, like, and everything. But he's like, but the Darth Vader redemption, Luke facing down the Emperor, are like the best scenes. He's like, these are the best scenes in all of Star Wars. And then there's this. So I guess after he explained, I'm like, okay, from the perspective of someone in their early 30s who discovered Star Wars in their late 20s, I could see,
Right.
where
Right.
they might go with that. But I did think that was interesting. I'm like, you need to go watch the prequels again. That's what I said. You need to go watch the prequels again, or
Yeah.
but his argument may have been that I think he just didn't think the highs in the prequels were as high as the original. So I guess if you think that the highs
Yeah.
from 6 are so great, then the lows are. So I guess but that's the thing about Star Wars is so many answers. That's some of
Yeah,
the beauties of
it's
Star
funny
Wars.
because I think one of my lowest moments in all of Star no, I wouldn't say in all of it, but, like, in the original trilogy at least is, like, I love Jabba's palace. I love that whole,
Mhm.
like, I think it's great. The Sarlacc fight,
Mhm.
everything. But, the Jedi Rock song, I
Oh,
just
from the version
the
from
special edition.
the special
To be
edition.
honest with you, Lapti Neck wasn't that great either, but it's just so weird. Like, the way it was done was so strange. Yeah, it's I mean,
When I watch
looking
that with
back
other people, I genuinely want to mute the TV. Like, I
yeah,
genuinely am like, I almost wanna pause it and be like, "So this wasn't in the original movie. This is that in," like, I wanna give a whole, like,
I'm a purist. Let's fast
explanation.
forward.
Like, I almost wanna apologize before, and I don't feel that way about any other part of Star Wars. I will
I
say that.
remember I remember in when I saw it when it was out in theaters in Lapti Neck, I had a very cynical friend that I saw one of the times I saw it so many times in the theaters, but he looked over at me when they were doing Lapti Neck, he goes, "If it didn't have this, it would be good." And that
That's
I knew that was like the highest thing he could say. He was like very negative about a lot of stuff,
you
but
know
like yeah, it really rubbed that whole sequence really rubbed him the wrong way. That just musical number
in
in Jabba's palace.
so the musical number in Star Wars, right? Is there so we're talking about disparity here. Is there a bigger disparity in any movie of that song from the special edition version and like Vader's like redemption and everything? Like just the disparity of like from what on earth like was George high on when he said this was the move? And then also like the dude was cooking on another level with the ideas, going on.
Yeah,
So in term that might take the cake in terms of just one moment versus another.
we could have a special edition conversation at some point because I
That'd be
have I
fun.
have I have feelings about that.
Um,
Mixed like anything,
yeah,
but yeah,
for
it's
sure.
true. Yeah, like sometimes it's like what and then you watch the ILM documentary, and George
Mhm,
is like, well, just dare to be goofy, and I think he just loved to just throw that crazy stuff in there because
mhm.
what for the other like you watch those movies again, they were so creative. The things he was doing, it was so crazy. No one was doing that,
Mhm.
except for like maybe Jim Henson or
Yeah,
but yeah, it's great. It's all part of the family, as I say.
yeah.
It's like people get like all bent out of shape, and
Sometimes, yeah, and because I think sometimes George will say that people are like, "Oh, he just says those things when he's afraid of someone saying it's not good or is a bad decision." And maybe sure, but
yeah,
I think
maybe,
one of the things to take away from that, I guess, is you have the creator of Star Wars basically telling you like, "Hey, relax, don't take everything so seriously. Like it can be stupid and you can think it's stupid and that actually be okay." You
yeah.
know. So, anyway, so the second person we wanted to talk about was Oscar Isaac, Poe Dameron himself, right? And the question here was he was asked recently, like if he'd ever like want to return to Star Wars. They're doing like the Frankenstein tours, I think, because that
Mhm.
movie comes out in a couple months, and because this is the way the world works now. If you're, doing a movie for Frankenstein and you're trying to talk about that, you're going to get asked about Star Wars if you've ever been to Star Wars. Um, And he said, I guess I'm a Star Wars, so sure, like if there's ever something to do with that, I would come back and be a Star Wars again. And to me, that it was like a weird comment because I couldn't tell if he was being, I guess, just a little bit like sly with it, or if he was just, trying to get rid of the conversation as quickly as possible to get back to what he was there to talk about. So I'm curious, like, what you think about this, because we've had some Oscar Isaac sightings in Star Wars recently, and scheduled appearances, and he's been supposed to be here, or he's been willing to talk about Star Wars a little more, when a few years ago he was basically saying there's no way he'd ever do Star Wars unless he was broke and wanted a second house, right? Is the famous quote from Oscar Isaac. So now he's like actually saying this, which Starfighter films in like a month or two. So it makes me think, like, is he already ready to come back for Star Wars because he's going to be in Starfighter, which makes the perfect sense because it's going to come out 8 years after Rise of Skywalker, and
honestly,
takes place 5-6 years after he is a starfighter himself, like a starfighter pilot.
It's so funny because whenever I hear about his name come up as far as a returning character, I just immediately go to the Rey movie, right? But it could make sense to see him in Starfighter, depending. We don't really know much about the story. There was, and I will say take this with the biggest grain of salt. This is definitely not confirmed, but
confirmed.
Some people were saying that the Rogue Squadron movie is now back on the table, and I don't think it ever really went away.
There was Patty Jenkins that said, I think it was like last year, she said that she was supposed to deliver a script, like it wasn't off, she still has like a script to deliver sort of thing, and that it was never dead, like that was never dead, and so we're like, oh, so it is back on the table.
Right. When I say back on the table, I don't mean that it's going into production anytime soon, but that it's
I think like a lot of these big franchises, and then Star Wars 2 is probably one of, like, if not the chief among them for this, is they probably have 50 projects or 30 projects that are in the works, from movies, shows, everything, where it's like, if we ever find something like, so Rogue Squadron is probably one of them where it's like, you know what? Jenkins might submit a draft, or they might have talks about it at some point, but I don't know if it'll ever go anywhere. So if he's coming back, it's Starfighter or bust, I think.
The reason I brought it up is that someone online mentioned that I wonder if there's a correlation between Starfighter and Rogue Squadron. And what I would say is if they want to go that route, that they're going to bring back, some kind of like fighter pilot type stories from like Rogue Squadron or something like that. Like, we don't know what Starfighter is right now. It could be a racing movie for all we know at this point. But it would make sense in that era to have Poe Dameron back. So I think there's definitely I think there's definitely a way for him to come back. Personally, I would love to see him again. I thought he was really great in the sequel trilogy. I wish he had, in some cases, more to do. But that's why I feel like we're really not done with those characters. And people may disagree if you didn't like the sequels, but I really like those characters, and I would love to see them come back.
People like to give a lot of crap on, sequel characters and stuff, but I feel like people spend way too much time debating Rey and Kylo, whose characters are pretty well fleshed out. I think I may not agree with the ending of Ben Solo and how that happened, but if you're going to be mad about anybody, you should be mad about Finn and Poe's arcs in The Rise of Skywalker, because they kind of get tossed aside, in my opinion. Like, I think, and which, the trilogy is not about them. It's about Rey and Ben for the most part. And people always like to give crap on to The Last Jedi actually did away with Finn and Poe. But my argument was that The Last Jedi was like the only movie that gave Finn and Poe, like especially Finn, like an actual arc at all.
Yeah,
versus Rise of Skywalker, just kind of like they just are like they're just on the mission, and it's like, all right, you're generals now, and then it's like, oh, hey, guess what? Finn's force sensitive, and Poe is learning how to lead again.
Yeah, it's funny because people said that about Finn's character in The Last Jedi, and it surprised me because at the end of the Force Awakens, he kind of really didn't choose a side. Like he just wants to be or to help Rey and to
Yep.
be with. I don't even mean romantically, but he just wants to.
He just wanted to
He's
help his
concerned about.
friend.
He wants to help his friend, and I thought he had a good arc in the Last Jedi, or kind of just realizing coming into who he was supposed to be, and the same with Poe, as far as learning how to be a leader. I thought it did a great job about that succession. Leia's kind of almost giving him kind of like, don't look, what are you looking at me for? Follow him, or and I thought that was great. And like you said, that it was kind of a little bit discombobulated in the final film, but yeah, I mean, I feel like there's more. I was hoping when Disney Plus, when they did Falcon and the Winter Soldier, there'd be a Poe and Finn show, or at this point now, I feel like I'm looking back to the big screen. I want those stories to go to the movies, which it should be, because I feel like those stories belong on the big screen.
It's one of those where it's too late to go back and and fix those things now. So how can we add on? Which it's interesting that we have this discussion. So I love talking about post Rise of Skywalker content, because this is like a movie that's taking place in the future. But then we're like 2 months away from the first post Episode 9 book that comes out, and it's featuring Finn as one of the prominent characters in that. So I'm excited for that book to come out. It's like that'll be the first thing that we have post episode 9 coming out. Will be this book in a couple months, and maybe that'll give us a few more hints as to what Finn's up to. But then who knows, like Poe may show up in the book. Like there may be some little nuggets that we get there that could give us some information about what's happening right now. So I'm really curious, because they never greenlight these things for these with big characters in unknown parts of the timeline. They very rarely give us. I mean, there's a reason why, like from pretty much any time since Disney's acquired, like there's been one like main Luke Skywalker novel, and it was Shadow of the Sith. And they made sure it was before, anything with Luke really started going off. Like he was in the process of the temple and like getting his temple going, and his young Padawans and Jedi Order going. And like that's the only Luke Skywalker novel that we have, because I think they're afraid sometimes of trying to put these characters in, telling these stories. So the fact that maybe we might get a little more details on that from this book is interesting. I said, I think when they announced Starfighter, that I felt like if there was a sequel trilogy character that was going to appear, it would be Poe, because you just look at the title, right? And it just makes sense. But I didn't know if Oscar Isaac would want to come back. But then you're like, he was supposed to be at like Celebration. And then, so I'm like, that's interesting. And then now he's talking about it here, and he's not doing the whole, yeah, I don't care about Star Wars. No, he's doing the whole like, yeah, I come back for Star Wars sort of thing. I'm like, okay, maybe we can connect some of those dots and say that Oscar Isaac will be back. I don't know. I think that would be a fun, easy win for them too, again, and it helps validate what they've already done in the sequels. But that cast, if you add Oscar Isaac to that cast, and you have Oscar Isaac, Ryan Gosling, and Matt Smith now being a villain, oh my goodness, like that's a lot of fun waiting to happen for Starfighter.
And I'm excited that it doesn't have the weight of needing to be a trilogy. It's just at this point a standalone movie, so it doesn't have to, I guess, like I said, bear the weight of those kind of expectations that, they can focus, Sean Levy can focus on that one movie and what to do, so I'm excited for that too. I know it seems like a long way away, but hopefully we'll find out more about it. I'm guessing maybe they'll talk about at D23, they'll talk about it gearing up for production.
I'm curious. This is one of those weird years for Star Wars where the last couple of years with like the Disney things, I'm like, there's really not a whole lot they're probably going to like show and really get into. But this is one of those or they might show like a little teaser for something that I'll look on my phone. Like I think they gave like a Mandalorian thing last year at D23 that I watched on my phone, and because someone illegally recorded, and I think I downloaded it before it went off the interwebs. But this is one of those where it's really interesting to see what they will show behind closed doors and what they'll release, because there's a lot of Star Wars stuff that they could potentially do. Like they could show some more behind the scenes photos from Ahsoka. They could drop a full trailer for Maul. They could drop a complete teaser trailer for Mando and Grogu. They could announce a brand new Star Wars show. I mean, there's no Star Wars shows announced after Ahsoka, but we know they have to have one that they're thinking about or have been working on pretty religiously, because Ahsoka's filming right now. It'll finish filming in probably about a month or so, a month and a half. And they'll, do all the post work. But then they're like, all right, what are we going to do for Disney Plus in 2027? And that work will start happening next year, probably. So I doubt they're going to go, an entire year without anything on Disney Plus for Star Wars. That doesn't seem likely.
It's the 50th anniversary, and I'm sure they'll have a lot of surprises up their sleeves.
So I don't know. I'm curious to see what that is. But you got anything else you want to tackle tonight before we call it good?
I think that's about it. Hopefully we'll be back Thursday with a live show.
Should be.
But
anyway. All right. Well, for Light and Life, everyone, remember, we're all the Republic, and we will see you later. Oh, almost hit the wrong button. There we go.